Don't trip, you know? I know things is hard right now. You looking for a job. You out there hustling. Money gonna come your way, just don't trip. You gotta keep your shoes tied. I know you mad at me and everything, just don't trip.
Okay, everybody. So, we had Michael Rupert and we had Gary Webb, who talked about an element of the CIA putting out drugs on the streets of America. And that involved Harry O. That involved Freeway Ricky Ross. That involved Blandone. And it involved getting money to fund covert activities. And the one activity that they were busted with was the Iran-Contra thing, funding the Contras so that they could mine the harbor in Bluefields. And I've been to Bluefields. I've been to Nicaragua. I was there in '96. And I saw all of these ruined ships that were in the harbor back then. I don't know if they're still there, but it looked like a morgue of ships because the CIA had funded mining of the harbor to help the Contras against the Sandinistas. And that all started with the Bolin Amendment. There were two Bolin Amendments, and the Bolin Amendments was basically forbidding Congress from funding anything to do with the Contras, so they had to take this off book. Well, one thing that we know when there's a funding source, a money pot, that people become dependent on that money pot. And just because you had Gary Webb and you had Michael Rupert, who are, by the way, both dead now from suicides, fishy suicides, because you had them, coming out whistleblowing. There was some kind of a cover-up. Then you had the acting director of the CIA come out. Michael Rupert confronts him. That's on the YouTube channel, so you can see that. So what we have when we look at the CIA's involvement in drug trafficking, you have Bush Sr., Bush Jr., and the Clintons that have basically continuity throughout, because you got Bush Sr., then he gives an 8-year term to the Clintons, and then you have Bush Jr., who comes in for another 8 years. So you basically have a 20-year span where those guys were in charge. And when we look at Bush Sr., Bush Sr. once lived in Compton. I heard that. I just shook my head. I said, it can't possibly be true. I fact-checked it, and sure enough, Bush Sr. did live in Compton. Now, I don't speak for Kevin Shipp, and I'm not the one who said it. Kevin Shipp's the one that said it. He's a whistleblower for the CIA. He talks about the deep state, and he talks about the shadow government as two distinct separate entities. And now we have Reggie Wright Jr., who just got a court order to take off his monitoring. And so this whole case that I've been saying for months was going to dissipate against the Wrights, seems like it's doing exactly that. It's dissipating because these guys are connected at the highest levels. They are probably connected to the deep state, the shadow government, whatever you want to call it. And I don't really know about all of that. I know that whatever's going on in Washington, D.C., I don't understand it. It's above my comprehension. But clearly, there were drugs being put out on the streets of America. And I think we're going to need to explore Death Row Records and the ties that they did or didn't have to Freeway Ricky Ross, Michael Harris, Blandone, the CIA, money laundering, drug trafficking, But it is curious to me that years of an investigation into death row records yields no arrests, no convictions, yields nothing. Lots of evidence collected about drug trafficking and money laundering. Lots of evidence of police officers being involved in this stuff, but no arrests, no convictions. And the only things that actually got convicted in the Rampart scandal, which was pretty far-reaching, was David Mack for a bank robbery. I mean, how are you not going to convict him for an armed bank robbery? And Rafael Perez, barely convicted for stealing cocaine out of the evidence lockers. I'm going to include some screenshots at the end of this. More later.
Yeah, but that's okay.
The minority to the majority.
I'm a hustler, and that won't change.
Still don't change. It's like it never will change. They won't bother. I lost a brother, but my niece, she lost her father. And how do I feel? How can I be real? Feeling this way, the way they drag down Emmett Till. It's messed up, man. My hands on the wheel. I'm still drunk driving. Road rage got me feeling like I'm out of my mind. I'm on the stage, feeling like crime, but I see these people in this place. Gotta speak the real, gotta keep it real. When I rap like this, it give me the chills. I hope you really feel what you really feel. Do what you do to make money just to pay your bills. It's messed up, they don't wanna see us going forward. Making sure I hold down the last name doors. It's been wild like a wild force, but I bet God got something better for us. We just gotta get together. Unity is everything. To my people, man. Struggle been real too long. Our OGs been through it, so it's time for us to make a change. And I promise I'm not gonna die until I change this. I got a baby girl in this world, so I ain't got no choice. Y'all either gonna take me out or ride with me, and I put that on everything.